Almost all the time that you think about inheritance and genetics, you realize that there's contributions from both parents that go into the genetic material of an offspring. Parents have 2 copies of each chromosome. They contribute 1 copy to their offspring. Parents have 2 copies of each version of the genes they carry, the 23,000 different genes that humans have. But they contribute only 1 of those copies, and the other parent contributes the other. And that generates some of the variation we see in offspring. But there's a kind of DNA that only comes from 1 parent, and it's mitochondrial DNA. Now, you remember mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. It's where you make the energy from the chemical bonds of food, and you convert that chemical energy into ATP, and that's how you power your cell's functions and indeed remain alive. Now, there's mitochondria in the egg, if we think about organisms like humans. So females put mitochondria into the egg, and males put mitochondria into the sperm. But something interesting happens when sperm and egg meet, and the male mitochondria are almost always completely eliminated, so that the only mitochondria left are from the female, and they replicate the DNA inside the mitochondria grow and divide, and they become the populations that inhabit all the different cells. And so in me, all my mitochondria came from my mom, and none of it came from my dad. Now, this is important and interesting because it's interesting, but it also is true that mitochondrial DNA can be preserved better in samples that are ancient or moderately old than the nuclear DNA, the regular chromosomes, so that you're much more likely to find intact mitochondrial DNA in a mammoth that you find that's 10,000 years old in some icy bog in Siberia. And mitochondrial DNA has really practical uses, and here's a story that fascinated me that was solved using mitochondrial DNA. So the background that some of you will know is that 1917, the Russian royal family, the Tsar and the Tsarina, and all their children were captured by the Soviet, and they were shipped off to Siberia. And after a period of time, the governments in place decided that these people were too dangerous to let live, and they killed them all. They took them down the basement and machine gunned them. And subsequently, people came forward claiming to be the children of the Tsar, specifically, most notably, Anastasia. A woman came forward and said, "I survived this massacre, and I am Anastasia." And this became a kind of, a cultural icon, a kind of interesting story that couldn't be proved or disproved. And eventually this woman, who gained many followers and was believed to be Anastasia by many, died. And we couldn't know for certain, was she really the daughter or was she an imposter? Now, when the Soviet Union fell, the government revealed that they had indeed shot the royal family and that they had disposed of the remains and tried to burn them, but that these bones were recovered and mitochondrial DNA could be extracted from them. And now what was needed was a person who had a common maternal ancestor with the Tsarina, so that they could serve as that mitochondrial DNA could be compared to the ones extracted from all these remains. And that person turned out to be Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth's consort. He agreed, DNA test samples were taken from him, and his mitochondrial DNA was compared to the various bones and material that were left, and turned out that they could account for the Tsarina, the Tsar, and all the children. And so this was confirmed, and the mystery of Anastasia was solved miraculously by the use of mitochondrial DNA. All the children indeed died in that massacre, and the woman claiming to be Anastasia was proved to be a fraud.